Welcome to the Kathleen Spracklin podcast. I am a woman on a mission to assemble a cadre of writers, thinkers, and teachers who are transforming the world one character at a time. And it all starts with one thing: a deep understanding of human motivation, why people do what they do, and the forces that drive them. This is episode number 16. Looking for what creates the good life is doomed. Sadly, the central goal of the book, Character, Strengths, and Virtues, that I've been examining in my podcast these last few days, the epic tome of Peterson and Siegelman, is doomed from the get-go to the exact fate the authors lament having experienced. They say, "We sometimes found ourselves sounding like bad evangelists, going on and on about virtue, but convincing no one, even ourselves, that virtue is worth pursuing." Early on, they expressed dismay that their original goal was to find a taxonomy of human strengths and virtues. They wanted a taxonomy because, in their words, a good taxonomy has the benefits of a good theory. It organizes and guides the activity of an entire discipline. They settled for a classification and ended up inevitably experiencing the lament we heard just a moment ago. It was inevitable. Without a taxonomy, any attempt at a classification is doomed to be unorganized and unguided. This shows up early on when they try to distinguish between virtues and character strengths. Virtues, they say, are the core characteristics valued by moral philosophers and religious thinkers. Then they name some, 6. While character strengths, they say, are the psychological ingredients, processes, or mechanisms that define virtues. Basically, they're saying that character strengths operationalize the virtues. And then they give an example using the virtue of wisdom, which they say can be achieved through such strengths as creativity, curiosity, love of learning, open-mindedness, and what we call perspective, they say, having a big picture on life. We'll go into that one as example another day, but already we can see that they have a muddle. They have no taxonomy, and yet they are arguing for the separation of virtues and character strengths using the language of taxonomy. They are saying they are separate because, by saying that there is a because behind it, then they're saying that there's a theory behind it as well. And their because is that the character strengths are the operational mechanisms of these virtues. But other than saying that the virtues are the ones that the philosophers and religious thinkers have named, they haven't really defined virtue. And they've only defined character strengths in the light of the undefined thing called virtues. And yet they're using a taxonomy, the language of taxonomy. If they stuck with classification, which is what they said they settled for, then we need to be seeing here the language of classification. If they were truly making a classification where we have one class that is virtues and another class that is character strengths, then they would use language that sounded something like this. We have chosen to divide attributes that we observe into 2 groupings, virtues and character strengths. The observable difference that determines which category an attribute belongs to is the following: and then they would lay out the definition that they chose for separating these two into separate classifications. Well, because you can see that they're already in a mess with circular definitions and undefined terms, claiming to have a classification but using language that's appropriate for taxonomy, you can see why they're already going to be into difficulties. So let's go back and see, why couldn't they find that taxonomy? Because a taxonomy certainly should have been possible. Why could they not achieve it? The challenge was that they were looking for a monopole. They were looking for goodness, the good life, and with an hypothesis that goodness will lead to a good life. And they kind of wanted to demonstrate that in some kind of an objective, measurable way. But you cannot isolatedly look at goodness any more than you can have a magnet with just a north or just a south pole. It does not exist. It cannot be found. You cannot disentangle goodness from the struggle to achieve it, nor can you disentangle it from the potential for the loss of it. That is why they could not find a taxonomy. Tomorrow, I will begin to lay out my taxonomy, and will show how the presence of a true taxonomy would indeed provide the organization and the guidance to make sense out of virtues and character strengths. Talk to you tomorrow, and thank you. Bye-bye.